This programme is brought to you by Big Motoring World, one of the UK's biggest used car supermarkets. For more information and to verify, find out more at bigmotoringworld.co.uk. Before we begin, let me offer one clear step towards better health. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's a small action, but one that ensures you receive trusted, up-to-date medical advice from me each week, designed to help you make informed decisions about your well-being. Now, this episode's guest is a leading voice in personal transformation, with a track record that spans elite sport, corporate leadership, and global audiences. He's a best-selling author, keynote speaker and mindset coach known for turning intention into action. Shaped by profound personal loss and a relentless drive to help others thrive, he's dedicated his life to helping people break free from fear, stress and self-doubt. Welcome, Pete Cohen.
Hello, my friend.
Pete, good to see you again.
Yeah,
it's been too long.
It really has.
You're looking very well.
Thank you very much.
Keeping very fit.
Yes.
So it's obviously practice what you preach, and here you are, the epitome of well-being. How's life?
Yes, life is interesting. I've actually been asking people a question recently. What's the greatest thing about being alive? And that question has definitely spawned some very interesting conversations.
I bet.
I think for me, that the greatest thing about being alive at the moment is being able to be loving. Be kind and to serve humanity in some way. I think that is the greatest thing about being alive.
And you've always done that. And part of this, I presume, is shaped by that very personal loss you had when you lost Hannah.
Yeah. Yeah, which is crazy. I mean, the fact that we're sitting here to me is a bit surreal, because obviously I've known you for 25 years, I think, but I used to watch you on television before we actually worked together on GMTV all those years ago. But yes, my wife passed away in 2023. She was given 18 months to live in 2011, and you were one of those people that I turned to, and I asked you for your advice. I asked, what should I do? And I never ever forget what you said. You looked at it and you came back to me and you said some words to me that just gave me the encouragement to take a step that gave my wife extra years of life without a shadow of a doubt. And I've shared that journey with you all the way.
Well, I can't take any credit for that, Pete, because you supported and loved her, looked after her, researched relentlessly for the best treatment she could possibly have, and you gave her those extra years, taking her not only to Mexico but to Germany as well. She, of course, had a brain tumour, which was inoperable.
So the first brain tumour that she had in 2011, she had surgery at the Royal Free. She had 8.5 hours. They did a wake surgery, because of where the brain tumour was. They woke her up and they stopped when her language started to change. So they weren't able to remove all of it. It was an astrocytoma, grade 3. She had radiotherapy, but the tumour came back quite quickly. And I found this treatment. Actually, it was in Houston with this Dr. Busyness.
Yeah.
As you know, huge amounts of controversy about this doctor. It was very expensive. It was like over 200,000. But, this treatment was amazing. She was dying. I mean, she was dying. You could see it. Yeah. And she made this ridiculous, incredible recovery. We had a second chance. We got married in 2014. Yeah. You came on my podcast many years ago. You met Hannah, and she knew what you meant to me, because you were one of those people. I know you said you didn't do anything, but you were just there. And you've always been there. You've always been that type of person that has been incredibly dependable and incredibly kind. And it's, I'm very grateful to you. I know you say, "Oh, I didn't do anything." Yes, you did.
Well,
you did.
Well, thanks, Pete. And you must miss her terribly. But you say it has changed you.
Yeah.
In ways that are wonderful. Explain.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, look, I lost my dad, I lost my mum, and I keep saying lost. It's as if I've lost them. I'm going to find them again. They've passed away. My dad passed away in 2018. My mum passed away in 2021, and Hannah passed away in 2023. I have spent my life running. I've spent my life being busy. I've spent my life with what some people would call it imposter syndrome. That might seem crazy to you, but because, I think you know me quite well, but I was always frightened to stop. But Hannah's passing kind of forced me to stop. I had to really face myself. I had to face how I was thinking, how I was feeling. I couldn't run away. I could run away from most things. I couldn't run away from this. So it really made me face my relationship with myself. And I just have to tell you, I feel better about myself. I feel much more calmer. I feel much more present. I don't feel like I need to perform anymore. I can just be me, which is crazy that it took Hannah to pass away for me to have a better relationship with myself. But I choose, grief is very challenging. I'm sure you've lost people in your life, right? I choose to celebrate the people who have passed away. And there's nothing more, the love they had for me. And, you know, if they were here now, I know exactly what they'd be saying to me. They would say, make the most of this, make the most of this conversation.
And it brings us back to that first quote you gave me about, you know, asking people, what is the best thing about being alive?
Well, one of them is definitely being able to celebrate the people who shared something with you. I mean, how many people in your life, you've told me, I remember about people who inspired you, that poured into you. They didn't have to.
Sure.
And it's like, we have an opportunity to honour these people. And I think that's a real key part of life, to honour the people who have honoured you and supported you. And
well, you have always been one of the most positive and inspiring people I've ever known. I remember years ago, back in the days of TVAM, which some people might even be able to remember, we did something called House of Fear.
Yeah.
And we took 5 people over a week, over the 5-day week,
5 days.
All of whom had different phobias. Now, one of them had a fear of heights to the extent that they couldn't stand on the first rung of a stepladder. And within that week, you had him abseiling down a tower.
Yeah.
And you cured all 5 of them from their different phobias within those few hours that you had on a daily basis for 5 days. I mean, you are remarkably successful.
Yeah, it was interesting because we kept in contact with those people, and some of them to this day I still know. In fact, one of them who had a spider phobia, really bad, Carl, he ended up having 2 tarantulas. One of them he called Shelob from Lord of the Rings. Okay. And it, you know, it does seem crazy, but, you know, just going back to my parents, my mum always said there's an answer to everything. And my dad always said, son, it's not what you know, it's who you know. So those are 2 of the strongest, I suppose, guiding principles in my life. So if you can't find an answer, find someone who can. Yeah. But I've been very fortunate in my work, in the studying I've done, the education that I have, to understand how the brain works in many cases, how phobias come about in many cases, and how phobias often happen in an instant. Something often happens that immediately then someone has installed a fear that you can uninstall it. It is possible.
Yeah, I mean, phobias are very common and span all kinds of subjects, but you make the treatment of it seem very easy, but you do it with humour. Yeah. You know, and I've seen you in action, and you get people laughing, and you get people talking, and you do it gradually, and there you go. Within a few sessions, their phobia is gone. Yeah. It must be very satisfying.
Yeah. Well, again, you know, you're someone who understands humour. As we got to know each other very well, you invited me to come down to your squash club, and we gave a talk to some of the members there.
Wearing different hats.
And I was thinking, okay, great, we're going to give a talk about health. I'm very passionate about the mental side of health, and I didn't know what to expect. We had dinner at your house, and then you said, why don't we dress up? And I was going, what? You want me to dress up? I thought, this is a bit weird, could be a bit kinky.
We did some role play, didn't we?
It was brilliant. And I was a doctor, you were a doctor. I came in with this condition. But what I saw about you is that you were prepared to use humour, but basically to give people a different perspective of well-being. And we know that people don't really change when we tell them what to do. The tele-approach doesn't really work, does it? For real change, it changes when perspective changes. And I remember looking at the audience and them going, maybe I should do something about my health, because unfortunately, as you well know, most people don't do anything about their health until their health becomes a problem. In fact, before Hannah had a brain tumour, had a massive seizure, rushed to hospital, she used to smoke, which I was not a fan of. I didn't even think I was going to spend the rest of my life with her. I liked her, but I didn't think this is the one for me. But I fell in love with her by seeing how we went through this horrendous ordeal. But she used to smoke, she used to drink. that brain tumor, she stopped drinking. She started eating a much healthier diet, stopped using different chemicals in the house. She embraced a healthy lifestyle. And that's what I'm just as passionate about now, is helping people reverse, helping people improve.
Yeah. I mean, you're quite right about the fact that people don't do anything about their health until something goes wrong. And I think it's true that in some parts of China, doctors and therapists are rewarded not for the people they cure, but for people they prevent becoming ill.
Yeah.
So it's the reverse of what we do. They're much more into prevention than curing things that have already started to show signs and symptoms. You're a life coach. You've worked for some major corporations. Did you find that line of work interesting as well?
Yes. Well, it's interesting being in this area where we're recording, because my first job when I left university, I did a sports science degree. I used to work at the Barbican, which was the biggest gym in Europe at the time. I used to work 60, 70, 80, 90 hours a week sometimes. So my background was in personal training, but it didn't take me very long to realize that the way people were thinking was really off. Because people would join and spend huge amounts of money in many cases, and then you'd never see them again. And I thought it was me. I thought I was the problem. So then I became very interested in nutrition. And then I heavily got into the world of psychology. And I studied, I went back to university, and I just started understanding more and more and more. And, you know, what's interesting is the first book I wrote was called Slimming with Pete, which you actually wrote an amazing quote for, but no one would publish it. I found a small publishing house in Wales. The back of the Sunday Times was always Amanda Ursel's diet books, who used to review them. I basically hounded her, you know, not like, you know, within the rights of not hounding someone. I was relentless.
Yes.
It's probably a better word.
Yes.
Which is kind of weird because we've become best friends. She took a chance on that book. She wrote the most amazing review. She said, by the end of this book, you'll be in danger of changing your eating habits, and discovered you're a wonderful person. That changed everything.
Okay.
All of a sudden, from a few people wanting to work with me, hundreds of people would come to my events. And then GMTV just started to do that Inch Loss Island, which was the first time we properly met, where we took some overweight people away. And she suggested to GMTV that I be the life coach. Of course, me, Amanda, and Nikki Waterman, who obviously sadly also passed away with a brain tumour, just like Hannah. Yeah. So it just seemed like I never planned to do the work that I did. It just seemed to unfold.
Sure. I remember we had a rowing ergometer challenge on Loss Island. Let's not talk about that.
Yeah, I think I beat you by like 1 metre. But considering you are a few years my senior,
I'm suffering from something called diminishing youth, Pete. Have you got a cure?
I haven't for that, my friend. Okay. But you're. It was great to see that you were someone that really understood and valued health, well-being and humour, and just
and that was a great little
we were pioneers. We pioneered that space again, because really years later it was what The Biggest Loser came about. We went first. I did the first ever live firewalk. Do you remember that? We did first ever.
I do.
And Martin Frizzell said to me afterwards, he said, "Have you done that before?" I went, "No." And he went, "Well, if you told me that, we never would have allowed you to do it."
No, exactly. No. And of course the island where we
Burr Island.
Where we did Burr Island is on a causeway, and when the tide comes in, it's cut off. And I remember the week before we went there. I went there on the Friday with a satellite truck to say we're coming here next week with 5 people who are going to, be given all this help to lose weight, and it was -4. That Friday morning in the dark. The tide was in, the sea spray was coming over, and I was getting colder and colder and colder. And in my earpiece they said, we're just going to another, so we'll be within 10 minutes, we're just going to another interview first. That happened 3 times. So half an hour later I was probably hypothermic. Yeah. The wind chill factor was like -20 or something, and I couldn't speak. I couldn't actually put my lips together to say p or th, and it came over as if I was hypothermic. And they said, "Hilary, that was great. You looked absolutely frozen and solid." And that's exactly what they wanted. But it was a great week, and we successfully got them to change their mindset about weight loss, and we got them exercising, and we got them eating the right foods, and it was a very interesting.
I saw a clip of it recently where I did this exercise with a lady where I asked her to imagine she could see herself in the future. And this is really interesting because I didn't know this until a good few years ago, that everything we do as human beings is governed by our relationship to the future. We are what the Greeks called teleological. So everything we do is for the future. But what science shows us is that you can put people into fMRI machines, look at brain activity. You could ask someone to think of themselves. You'd see a region of the brain light up. Ask them to think of a stranger, see a different region of the brain light up. Ask people to think of themselves a year or 5 years down the line. The part of the brain that lights up for the stranger lights up. So people don't have empathy for a version of themselves that they don't know exists. And this is one of the reasons, I think, that a lot of people don't invest in their well-being, because they think, well, what's the point? I don't see a future that I'm inspired about. But with that example when we did it on GMTV with this woman called Leslie, I asked her to imagine she could see herself. I said, imagine you're at home and there's a front door. On the other side of the front door is you, slimmer, fitter, healthier. Imagine the door opens up and you can see yourself, the back of you, the front of you, and then step into you. And she physically stepped in, and then she stepped out and she burst out crying, made great TV. Obviously fantastic TV. And then Kate Garraway interviewed her, I think, the next day. And she said, what happened? She said, well, I just didn't think it was possible that this could actually happen. And what was so ironic, Hilary, is that she contacted me maybe a year later and told me that what she had imagined had come true.
Wow.
Now, that might sound crazy to people, but imagination is where everything happens,
Absolutely,
right?
Yeah.
I think it was Einstein that said imagination is more important than what you know. And when you work with athletes, I've worked with, as you know, many sporting professionals, athletes. Yeah. If I'm working with them, then there's three people in the relationship. There's you, there's me, and then there's the person that you're going to become. And the reason you're working with me is that you're not this person, and we're going to work at becoming this person. So when you compete, you've become this person.
Very interesting, and it's also interesting is getting people to think back to themselves as children, and I often say to people who are feeling depressed or anxious or not looking after themselves, just to imagine themselves as a 4 or 5 year old sitting on their own knee and talking to that child and saying, how am I going to look after you? How am I going to put my arms around them and nurture themselves? So it's almost like imagining the past and them as children now, as well as looking into the future. So you've worked with some major sports stars. It must be fascinating working with them and seeing them achieve success.
Well, just going back to what you said there, trauma is a huge part of our lives. I think for most of us, we've experienced things that we've never really dealt with. And often in order to help someone go forwards, you've got to stop and kind of heal the past, make sense of the past. And that example that you gave there is really powerful, to actually stop and heal your inner child, the part of you that's been hurt. Where did you learn that, by the way? Who told you that?
I can't remember where I heard that. I think it was part of a discussion about helping people to look after themselves better, to get people to talk as if they were talking to somebody, helping somebody. We're good at talking to other people about, why don't you do this? Why don't you look at? But we hardly ever do it for ourselves. So imagining yourself as that child, so how would you look after that yourself as a child, helps people to sort of recognise the way they should look after themselves right now as adults.
Well, we could continue to talk about that, but I want to answer your question. Yeah, look, of all the sports people I worked with, probably the most fascinating was Ronnie O'Sullivan. I worked with him for 2 years. In 2002, 2004, he made a 2-hour appointment to see me. He stayed at my house for 3 days.
Wow.
I didn't even know him. But that was fascinating. Ronnie has a fascinating story. Ronnie's father committed murder when Ronnie was 14. And in fact, it's interesting, you talk about trauma. We were at an event where Ronnie was playing in York, and we'd been talking a lot in the day, and then he was in the bath, and he started crying, or he was shouting, I don't know, something, and I banged on the door. I said, you okay? And he said, yeah. And then we spoke about it later on. He said, I realised I've been playing snooker all my life for my dad, and every time I lose, I feel like I've let him down. He's spoken about this publicly, so it's not an issue for me to speak about it. But I thought, wow. Imagine that, you're playing for your dad, and every time you lose, you feel that you could have done something different at that time that would have made a difference. That's why talking is so important. And, just to create that space where we can have a meaningful conversation to make sense of our own experience, because life is very challenging. It's not straightforward. Being human isn't easy.
No. I mean, you're quite right that question, what if I'd done that, could I have avoided that trauma? Could I have
I think
saved
that myself
person?
About Hannah.
I'm sure.
Because, she died in 2023. When you have radiation on the brain, it's quite common to have a cancer again. This time she was diagnosed in 2021 with a glioblastoma, multiform. She wasn't given long to live. They weren't going to give her any treatment. I then found a treatment in Germany, which was a viral treatment. They put 2 viruses in her brain, chickenpox and another virus, and it triggered an immune response. And I've seen all of the scans. And they've now written a medical paper about Hannah, how she responded to this treatment. Now, you know what happens when you put a virus in the body, what the body wakes up to something. Yeah. And sometimes I think it's important, you have to be careful, but to look outside the box. And I think in a roundabout way, to look outside the box of ourselves, to look at how we're living. This is what the Greeks and the ancient philosophy around mindfulness, know thyself, to step away from yourself, to observe what is going on inside your own thinking and realizing how you're thinking and feeling. You are more than what you think and feel. That's how I look at it. But it's strange that it takes stop moments for us to really start looking at life differently.
Sure.
That's why I like conversations like this, because I know someone will be listening to this going, oh, I never thought of it like that.
Absolutely. We'll take a short break there. Now, this podcast is brought to you by Big Motoring World, one of the UK's largest used car supermarkets. Big Motoring World checks vehicle pricing regularly to give you their best price guaranteed. And with their new finance package, you can get a rate as low as 9.9% APR, 11.9% APR representative. With a wide choice of vehicles and a focus on customer service, Big Motoring World supports drivers through each step of the process. Their stated aim is to be, in their words, big on what matters to you. Search bigmotoringworld.co.uk to verify and to find your nearest store. That's bigmotoringworld.co.uk. So you mentioned Ronnie O'Sullivan and snooker. You must have worked in other sports fields as well. Yes. Rugby, football.
Yeah, all of them. So probably one of the most interesting people I worked with Sally Gunnell. So I didn't work with her as an athlete. I worked with her when she started professionally speaking, because she'd never done that before. We had the same agent, and the first talk was at Chichester Theatre, which was amazing. I know you like the theatre. I love the theatre. Yeah. So they built a running track around the outside of the stadium, outside of the theatre. I mean, the stage, there was a running track.
Right.
And that was amazing, like sharing a stage with Sally Gunnell, Olympic world champion. But then the next talk she gave was in Barcelona, where she won. And we went to the track and they wouldn't let her on. And I was going, do you not know who this is? But there's nothing better than working with someone and being a part of someone's journey. And, sports people can be fantastic, because you get to see the effectiveness of your work by how they perform, or phobias.
Yeah. Have you worked with sportsmen or women who have transformed their achievements through psychology, who were doubting themselves so much or got so nervous that they couldn't perform to the best of their ability, and then turn that round?
Yes. I mean, the quality of the experience of a sports person is really the quality of the conversation that they're having. And I think the thing I've always been fascinated in is what people call the flow. So there's a very famous book called The Flow by Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. Please don't ask me to spell that. I'm very dyslexic. But I remember reading that at university, and it talked about this flow state of where you kind of forget yourself. You forget where you are, and you become one with just being in the moment. The challenge with that for most people is you then have to let go of the outcome. You have to let go of the past, maybe what happened before. And because our brains can basically play tricks on us. In Buddhism, they call it dukkha. In Hinduism, they call it maya. It can create illusions. It can create fantasies. For athletes, you can imagine, you think, you can put so much meaning into what you're doing. That's what I said to Ronnie, how much do you want to win? To pay often the ultimate price to win is to forget about the outcome. Like you and I, we could think about the end of this podcast and what we want to get out of it, but it's like, is that really important? Can we just see what happens as a result of having a conversation and see what transpires? But for an athlete, you can imagine that's difficult. But they have to. There was a very famous American football player, John Brody, who played for the San Francisco 49ers. I remember reading about him, and he said the biggest problem with sports people is they don't practice getting into that space outside of the field of play. Their lives are often hectic, and if they don't practice it, how can they recreate it?
So it's about self-belief, confidence, and blocking out the negative stuff.
Yeah, which isn't easy to do.
Of course.
How many thoughts do we have in a day? Thousands.
Absolutely.
You know, to be able,
So how's it been living with dyslexia? Has it been a handicap, or
I think it was definitely a handicap when I was at school, because the system didn't, just didn't care for people with dyslexia.
Did it hold you back at school?
Definitely. I was at a private school. I was very lucky. I went to a private school, but I never would have passed common entrance to go into the next level. And my dad lost his business anyway, so but I had to leave that school and go into a state school, and it was I hated school. Did the
teachers recognise it then?
No, they recognised it at university, so I was just given an extra half an hour in my exams, but. I think dyslexia now is looked upon very differently. I think a lot of people see it as a great gift. There are some people like Jamie Oliver and Sir Richard Branson, quite famous in speaking up about their ability to be creative. But no, school for me was I got 1 O level, in history, and I took that early. I took it again and failed, but they couldn't take it away from me. I don't have maths. I don't have English.
And yet you're so eloquent.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it's probably, I mean, it's, I'd like to inspire more people around understanding the labels that they've been given, and it doesn't have to be necessarily a label that inhibits your life. Sure. If you can find a way to use it, it can be the greatest thing that ever happened to you.
Yeah, absolutely. And you spend a lot of time public speaking. And I know how good you are at that. What sort of things do you talk about? How do you start?
I love being on stage. So I wanted to be an actor when I was younger, but I had dyslexia. It's funny you say that, because I've not thought about this for a long time. I had real issues learning lines. So in many cases, I was given a fairly good role in a play, but after a few weeks, twice this happened, the director said, look, I'm sorry, we're going to have to. So I suppose being on stage, and I used to teach aerobics. Again, just being up in front of people was something I really, really, really enjoyed. But speaking on stage, I think the stuff I tend to speak about the most is about intention, about overcoming adversity, dealing with change and adversity. That's obviously something I have done. And change and adversity is such a fascinating thing, because a change and uncertainty, people want certainty in a world where nothing is certain. People are frightened of change, where change is the only constant thing. Unless we change our relationship to change and uncertainty, life is going to be even more difficult.
We're going to be anxious.
So I love to talk about this in ways that inspire people, that again make people use humour, but make people look at this differently.
And you once said to me, Hilary, I'll never have a tattoo.
Yeah.
But show the camera.
Yeah.
We've got breathe and intentions.
Yeah.
Explain.
Well, Hannah's motto was just get on with it. She always said that in the document. I made this documentary. It's just won awards in Cannes, in Hollywood, which was crazy. I didn't make the film for that reason. I just made it because this was my way of dealing with grief. I wanted people that had been a part of the journey to say, look who this person was. And like I said, it's won these multiple awards. But Hannah, her motto was just get on with it. And it, to me, is intentional thinking. And intentional thinking is where you can see beyond where you are. You can see something that is in front of you, and you understand, this is something I've got to do, and I have to be intentional about it. When you're intentional, my perspective of this, Hilary, is that it's going to be challenging. It's like a workout. My intention is to do this workout. I know it's going to be difficult. I know I probably won't even feel like doing it. But what's that got to do with it? When something is important enough for you to do it. So I just want to honour her, celebrate her by being intentional about everything I do as best as I can. And breath, I know that might seem like a crazy thing to have tattooed on your arm, but to me, just taking a moment to be aware of your breath is a way of bringing you into the present moment.
Yeah, and it's a form of relaxation, using the vagus nerve, the great nerve, to calm everything down, control our heart rate, our breathing, and of course our thoughts.
Imagine the impact that would have if people around the world started to become more aware of their breath. There's a new word. So obesogenic was a word in the 90s, a world that is producing obesity. Now we have a new word, anxiogenic, a society that is producing anxiety. It's not surprising, right?
Sure.
How do we help people? We're living in a sympathetic state, most people. I had spent most of my life in a state of stress. But what grief has done is forced me to become more parasympathetic, to activate the vagus nerve, to be scientific, but just to be more present, to be calmer. We knew about this you knew about this in the 70s, the 80s, heart disease. How much of heart disease was coming from stress? What about all the other diseases that we know about that come about through stress? So, and I want to help the world breathe.
And it's not as if our population don't need the help. I mean, there's a lot of anxious people, a lot of depressed people. So mental health is off the scale at the moment. So people are they not resilient enough, do you think? Or their coping mechanisms aren't as they should be? The awareness isn't great enough. What do you think is going wrong, particularly in our young people in today's world?
Well, none of this is going to surprise you. I was looking for my phone here, but it's not in this room. But that is the biggest addiction that we've ever seen in the history of humanity. It's a plane that's already taken off. We should never have let it take off, but we didn't know.
Sure.
Because that is creating huge amounts of anxiety, social comparison. It's what people, and actually, the problems it's causing with people's necks, because people are like this. And when you look down, you feel down. So that's definitely one reason. But it's interesting, we live in a world where we tend to see the best of people in a disaster. So when really horrible things happen, people start behaving in ways they wouldn't normally. So I don't know what we're going to do about some of these issues, but
I love your positive attitude. I mean, I think you're like me, that you're glass half full always, and you're always thinking of the positives. So it's easy to listen to current news, which tends to be incredibly negative. We only hear about tragedies and bad things. There's much less these days which is inspiring and uplifting. And I remember, as a child and growing up as a teenager, probably there was much more in the news about people we could look up to, things that we could aspire to. And I think that's missing. Do you
It's
agree?
definitely missing. And the way that social media works, and I've seen this more recently, that it's going to give you more stuff that is shocking. You better be careful if you watch something that's shocking, because then you're going to get more of it.
Sure.
And then we now have polarity like never before, where people are just set in a certain camp. There's no middle ground anymore. And
isn't it true that people tend, if they get 100 comments about themselves,
they'll look for the
99 are
negative.
good, but the one they read constantly is the one that's critical. So we focus on the things that are said about us, which we don't like, and we take those to heart.
Yes, I think a lot of people do. You have to be a special type of person to not get involved in what people think about you. But if you know who you are and you know who you stand for, then you tend to be like, well, it can be water off a duck's back. But I think, Hilary, we are designed to survive. We're not designed to thrive. And if we want to thrive and be happy and be fulfilled, it takes dedication, because the stress response is always much more likely to kick in.
Well, you're surviving extremely well. What's next for you? Where do you want to be in a few years' time?
That's a great question.
What do you want to achieve?
I want to spend more time with people like you.
Me too.
I've realised. Yeah,
we should spend more time. It's been too long since I saw you last.
Yeah, I think I want to just be more present with. I want to be able to look back. Look, I know with Hannah, I know with my parents, I wasn't as present as I could have been. I was always busy being busy. I had busyness disease.
I don't think you could have done any more than you did.
Yes, but I lived life in a lot of stress. I had a lot of hurry sickness, so I would always I'd be thinking about what's next. I want to be able to look back in a few years and go, I was really present with you. Yeah. I was really present with my brother, my brother's children. That's why I want to look back. And I want to inspire more people to stop and look at their lives differently, and then intentionally transform their lives in any way they want, whether that's with their health, their relationships, their wealth, their work, their service, to help people grow, to help people create more. I feel like I've only just got started in the work that I want to do, the mark I want to leave on this earth.
You've already made a huge mark on so many people's lives. You inspire people. You're incredibly positive. You're a fantastic guy.
Well, it takes one to know one.
Privileged to know you. And
Thank you.
And be your mate, Pete. So keep up the good work, won't you?
I definitely will.
And keep well. Thank you. My thanks to Pete there. Don't forget, you can watch all my interviews on the Dr Hilary Show YouTube page, including my recent conversation with sexual health specialist Dr Anand Patel.
They found that if you cycle for more than 90 minutes per week, your sperm count drops by 30%.
Is that right?
Yeah, because just the excess heat
Yes.
that it generates.
Yes.
So your testicles are meant to, your testicles are meant to hang outside the body for a reason. They're meant to be 3 degrees cooler than the body.
For sperm production.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, it always used to be said tight jeans,
Oh my God, like the 90s and 2000s were a nightmare. Like everyone was wearing skinny
trousers, that's right.
Oh God. Well, I suppose it comes round in cycles, doesn't it? But drainpipe trousers, really tight sort of lycra underwear.
Yeah.
So people are just doing a bit too much. Let them hang free. For fertility, let them hang free.
Hit subscribe on YouTube now so you don't miss what's coming next. We'll continue the conversation about your health and focus on what truly matters to you. And for more information and show notes on all our programs, go to drhilaryjones.com.